Hey everyone, it's Jay Sperling at Sperling Funeral Home. I'd like to welcome you to a Friday afternoon chat. Today we're going to talk a little bit about grief. I'm also going to cross-post this video on another Facebook page I started, which is entitled Living Through Grief. Those of you that know me, some of you watching this have done my support groups before. That's the title of our support groups. We call it Living Through Grief because grief is not something that you can go around, under, over. It's something that you have to go through to be able to work on that healing process. Today, what I want to do is talk about that first year after grief. Previous video that I did, I talked about the acute part of grief, and really how crisis, mourning, and grief are three totally different things, and how crisis and mourning are that acute stage. Grief starts to settle in after maybe 3 to 4, 5 weeks after someone has died. Grief is your more long-term journey. It is that venture into what we could say the unknown. And during the first year, it's a struggle just to be able to figure out who you are and where you're at, a lot of times. It is a snowstorm of emotions. And as people say to me a lot of times, it's like that first year went so fast, but the whole time it was in slow motion. And what I try to explain to them is that's okay. And that is what it typically is. So what do they say it goes so fast? Well, what they find is that every holiday, every birthday, every anniversary, every event always feels like there's a hole in your heart because you're missing that person there to celebrate with them. And those events come and go, it seems to be pretty quickly. There's a lot of anxiety that builds up for them, like, oh, how are we going to manage, this Christmas holiday? They're not going to be there. What are we going to do? It's going to be different. But a lot of times when people talk to me is the day actually comes and goes pretty fast, and they manage through it. A lot of times the bigger struggle is after, because now they don't have something to be worked up about. Now they don't have something to talk about, to worry about. And that a lot of times is when I have people come to our groups that say, man, I'm struggling now. A lot of times in January, people will come to me and they'll say, we're struggling. We made it through the holidays. We thought we'd be better. We'd be able to get through Christmas. We'd be able to get through the new year. Maybe there's a birthday or something mixed in there, and we'll be better then. And they find that when January comes, they're not better. So those things are normal. And that's part of what I want people to understand, is that grief is normal, and you have to go through those things. So the first year is going to have that. It's also a time of mass adjustment because you're learning new roles. Maybe the roles in your family, you were dividing them with a person that passed away, be it a child or a spouse or a parent. You know, a lot of times we all have our roles within our family systems. And when someone dies, we have to be able to compensate for the roles that they played. And people have to put on those hats. And sometimes they do them unwillingly. Sometimes they're forced to do it. And that's all part of the grief process, is the stuff that the feelings and the emotions and the physical pain that comes up from doing all that. I think one of the good examples that I talked about, or I've heard a lot of times, and I use also, is that grief is like a spiral. And sometimes, especially a child's slide, and when you're at the top of that spiral slide, it goes much faster. And usually when your grief starts, that is what it's like. You know, your emotions, everything going on in your life is spinning very fast. Also like a tornado, right? At the bottom of it, it's spinning very fast. And as time goes on, what happens is these things that are going on slow down. And your grief slows down a little bit. Sometimes it's right up in front. Sometimes it goes to the back, comes to the front, goes to the back. And all the emotions that occur with grief also are involved in that. We find that in year one, there's a lot of that. It's a lot of spinning. Head spins, you just don't know where you're at, what you're doing, what your purpose is, and where you're going. It's all normal. And my advice for people, and I don't like to give advice because people are grieving, hear enough of it from others. My advice is to be present with your grief and to know that it's there, and to understand that some days are going to be good and some days are going to be bad, and to find a place that's an outlet for your grief. Find a place where there are other people who are grieving, like deaths that you have occurred in your family, so that you know you're not alone, and that other people have those kind of same feelings and thought processes. A lot of times you can think you're crazy because with grief, we tend to isolate a little bit. And people say, I think I'm crazy because I'm thinking this. Well, if you're in a group, you can find out that someone else says, I thought the same thing and am at the same place as you, or were at the same place as you. And that tends to help out a lot, especially in year one, just knowing that you're not alone and that there's other people out there doing that same kind of grief work that you're doing. So what I've always found amazing, one of the things that was eye-opening to me was that year two is a lot of times harder than year one. And I know that a lot of people will hear me say that, and it's deflating. I will gladly admit that, to hear that. But I think also that when you get to year two, it becomes comforting because it's different. And you really kind of start working on a lot of the hard stuff because you've gone through everything once the first time. And now you start working on the meat and potatoes of where your emotions and feelings and the loss and how it's affecting you is. So thank you again for listening. I always try to make these short. I try not to make them too long. If they get too long, you tune out. So I will be back again next Friday with another video, and we'll be doing some more grief stuff, like I said, talking about that year two and beyond in our next grief chat in probably about 3 weeks or so. So very good, everyone. Hope you have a good weekend. Thanks. Bye-bye.